Zen at the Sharp End. Welcome to the podcast about how to turn difficult people and relationships into your best teachers. I'm Mark Westmackett, a Zen Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and ex-professional astronomer. This is a podcast to go along with my latest book, Zen and the Art of Dealing with Difficult People, which is out now and available to order in all the usual places. In each episode, we'll be exploring different varieties of people, relationships and situations that we find irritating, difficult or painful. Together with a number of Zen friends, I'll be discussing how the practices of Buddhism and mindfulness can help us see our difficult people as troublesome Buddhas, our greatest teachers. This podcast is sponsored by Zen Minded, an online lifestyle store offering you the very best in Japanese craft, incense, and other Zen-inspired home goods. Check it out at www.zenminded.uk. Oh, Penny, thanks very much for joining us today on this podcast and agreeing to talk a little bit about the subject of our troublesome Buddhas. So maybe we could start off by talking a little bit about, maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience of Zen, what got you into it and some of the things you found along the way as you've been practicing.
Yeah. So I suppose my Zen practice started, 5, 6 years ago now. Maybe a little bit longer. But prior to that, I used to practice with the Triratna Society. So had practiced with them for a number of years. So had quite an established meditation practice. I'm also a religious studies specialist, and I used to teach Buddhism at A level. So I had a real lot of personal interest, both academically and also in my own practice in Buddhism in general. And then I just became more drawn to Zen. And I was teaching about it, and I was like, I'm just going to kind of try this, because in the Triratna Society, they have two main practices, so mindfulness of breathing and metta bhavana. And I was quite interested by this idea of zazen and this idea of just sitting. And I kind of started trying that just by myself. And actually, I just found myself quite at sea, because there was no hook, there was no anchor. And I'd really, really spent a lot of years concentrating a lot, meditating. So to sit, in this kind of open state, I found actually very, very difficult. Anyway, then I did my yoga teacher training with Zenways, with Daizan, and that really kind of started to open things up and move things around, particularly taking what had been a mental practice or a mental training, very, very much about kind of discipline and control, and really then actually allowing that into the body and opening up the body. Can't say it was necessarily a simple journey. We've had lots of ups and downs and kind of some quite difficult periods of practice. But there's always been I've always had a sort of a drive or a desire to really try and know, really, just to know, to experience what we might call true nature or our true selves. So I think that's kind of kept it going, and I've kind of gone a bit around the houses in circles, come back to it, and it's very much a work in progress, I think. I mean, as we all know, meditation always is. And always will be, but I feel now I've got a real sort of I don't know how to describe it, a depth or a breadth. So it's quite hard to put into words, really, but a real sense of this is very worthwhile. I think very worthwhile, this whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, in which case, if I was to say the phrase troublesome Buddha to you, what does that bring up in terms of, associations or understanding or, indeed, like particular examples?
Yes. Yeah. It does make me laugh, because I might not have been laughing a few years ago. I might have just been fuming, or just been like, "Oh my god, you know what they've just done." But yes, yeah, this idea that yes, that perhaps the most difficult people in our lives can actually be our teachers, our Buddhas. Um, I feel like I'm in a position now to be able to see that and to actually use it then as part of my practice, and be able to see those, the reactions, all those, mental formations and perceptions that I have and have held over the years about particular people in my life, and how they kind of trigger very, very set ways of behaving and responding. And I feel as the years have gone by, I'm kind of a little bit more able to just create some space in those reactions of mine. How I respond. Not always that much space, but just the tiniest bit of space sometimes can make all the difference, really, in how an interaction can be with someone. Yeah, yeah.
When do you think you're aware of coming across that phrase first?
Oh, I think I've been aware of it for a long time, but I think when I before I'd done quite a lot of work on really trying to just really allow things to happen in my own practice. Prior to that, I think I was quite cynical about it and thought, that's a bit of a twee Buddhist thing, isn't it? That, the people who really wind you up are actually there. They can be there too. As a teacher, I was just like, oh yeah, bloody Buddhists. God, they're just so smug, aren't they? Even the worst people in their lives are there to teach them a lesson. So I think at first I felt it was all a bit holy and a bit sort of, oh yes, I can deal with these difficult people. But actually, as I've found as a practice, I think it's become more compassionate. So I can kind of I can feel into how that other person, what's going on for them, or why they might be behaving like that. And it's also given me insight into my own kind of accumulations and patterns of behavior, being able to see that's the same for all of us. It's the same for everybody. So it's not a kind of smug, oh yes, I'm just able to deal with these people. It's actually a kind of real compassion for their suffering and my suffering, and how those can bump into each other and spark up, if I'm not a kind of aware of it. So yeah, certainly my feeling about it has changed over the years, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really great that you comment how um, it can often feel from the beginning like a bit of a twee, um, holier than thou kind of sentiment, but actually it's a deeply valuable, practical um, application, I suppose, of our practice in some of those other relationships, the trickier parts of our life, I suppose.
I think absolutely, actually, and the more I practice, the more I feel that, there's 24 hours in a day. If you sit for half an hour or an hour, you've got 23 other hours of the day. Okay, you're going to be asleep for maybe 6 or 8 of them, but the rest of the time, unless you're sat in a cave somewhere by yourself, you're interacting with other people all the time, and whether that's total strangers who might, kind of push your buttons, or whether it's your closest family and friends. And for me, I think that's where the practice is, kind of sitting on the cushion, if you like, is a bit of a, I don't know, a recharging of the batteries, if you like. And then the rest of the time is the actual kind of cutting edge of the practice. And time again, we just have those opportunities, don't we? And how we relate and how we respond over and over again. That's it. It's the actual kind of, yeah, the practice in action, isn't it? And it would be
Mm.
pointless if all I'm going to do every day is sit on my cushion and meditate, and that's lovely, and then go out and be be a total, idiot in the world. It's yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so have you got any particular, examples or situations that are spring to mind in terms of where you've learnt a lot, as you say, about our habits and our patterns and tendencies?
Yeah, totally. I mean, mainly, I suppose, one of the biggest areas of my practice has been my relationship with my mum. Um, I mean, I'm kind of from a big family, so I've got one of 6 kids, and I think when I grew up, I just wanted to leave home and get away. I wanted to go to uni. I wanted to just leave all that. I could, just really, really, really just pushed all my buttons, wound me up, however you want to describe it. And and I think over the years, the way I dealt with what I felt was a very difficult relationship was by really, really keeping myself away and being very distant. And then and then over the years of my practice, I've kind of, certainly when I've been on retreats and things and working with koans, memories, experiences that have been very, very deeply related to my mum and to incidents with her have come up, and I've kind of really then had to, well, I suppose, sit with those and allow those, but also it has caused me to then kind of reassess or reflect on all those accumulated perceptions I've clung on to over my life. I mean, and I'm 53 now, so I've had plenty of years of clinging onto them and letting them embed and then become really rigid. So I suppose with the Zen, it was about trying to let those really just become a little bit looser, a little bit freer, and actually see her in a different light, not in the lens of me, but in a lens of a much more, maybe like a softer lens, or one with more compassion in it. So that has certainly changed my my sense of her as a being, as opposed to just, oh my God, that's my mum, she really annoys me, kind of thing. So there's definitely been in myself, and I can feel it. I can feel it very physically. Normally she'd ring up or whatever. I'd just be like, oh, the shoulders would go up. I'd be like, gritted teeth, whatever. And it's okay. I can relax. I can call her. I can chat to her, even if while I'm on the phone, I can see and notice my own reactions and perceptions when they kind of fall into old just sort of entrenched grooves of being. I can actually see them much more clearly, so it makes it much more relaxing, and it's a lot less stressful.
Yeah. And has there been like a moment or a few moments that have felt like a real shift, or has it been more of a gradual, slow process?
It's been more of a gradual process, but because I live quite a long way away from her, so in a way I can kind of choose when to visit and when to talk to her and all that kind of stuff. But more recently, because she's had a few health problems, and with COVID and everything, wasn't really navigating the whole how on earth do you get to see a doctor and all those kind of systems and things. And then I was thinking, actually, this is something I can do. I'm quite good at organizing stuff. I'm quite, persistent. I will get on the phone and whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I actually just thought, and this is really valuable. This is something I can do for her that she's not able to do for herself, and nobody else is going to do for her. So I kind of spent a bit of time, ringing it. I had to ring up doctors and physios and what have you, but just to try and get her an appointment for something. Afterwards, I felt like this is what I can do. This is what I can do for her. Okay, that's really useful. Where I'm using my strengths, but I also feel like I am of service, if you like, for her. And it made me think I could do more. I could do more like this. Okay, so even though I'm not there, even though I might get, if I'm having a phone conversation with them, I can feel that like a kind of rising reaction kind of thing. I was thinking, actually, this is something I can do that's really helpful and really useful. And that also for me is a bit of gratitude, and it's just in a tiny way, just kind of quite practically sort of saying thank you for everything you did for me when I was a kid and totally didn't appreciate it. So so that's fairly recent. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm quite looking forward to how that might develop. What else could I do that's actually, pretty low level, simple, practical things, but that for me, become a sort of an act of gratitude, I suppose. Yeah, an act of service for her. Yeah.
I suppose that's the nice thing about having someone who's very close and has obviously been clearly difficult, but the ongoing relationship allows the potential for a continuous shift and change, over time, that we can learn, we can apply, we can try, we get further frustrated, but then that becomes also part of what we're noticing, and that can sort of add up, I suppose, over the years and allow things to shift, as opposed to someone who's like just a troublesome person for one day. We might learn from that and then we apply it to someone else. But the beautiful thing about this, someone who's close, is that we get to continually experiment, I suppose, and shift.
And I think because you've got that sense of, if it's one person over a life, over my lifetime, then for me it's been really useful in my own practice as I've begun to unravel all those accumulations, of life, and to look at how those have shaped my own perceptions and attitudes and behaviors, things I've done in the past. I suppose that, the beautiful thing about it is that there's room for it to continue and evolve. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I was on the phone to the other night, and after about 15 minutes, I was thinking, "Whoa, I can feel quite a lot of frustration arising." But it's not kind of like magic overnight, but it's that whole sense of a process that sort of weaves itself around, but that is somehow much more freer and much more spacious, and doesn't result in separation or shutdown or avoidance anymore. And I think that's really, it's kind of deeply, I don't know, I'm not sure satisfying is the right word, but it just seems like it's a really a good thing to be doing, or a good way to be, I don't know, be it, I suppose. Yeah.
And so I wonder if perhaps if you met a younger version of yourself, dealing with the things that you've been dealing with, would there be any particular kind of advice you'd give to someone? How could a similar person like yourself deal? What would you say?
That's a good one, isn't it? Because I suppose, yeah, my younger self probably wouldn't have really wouldn't have listened. Maybe gone for a beer with her and just said, "Don't put off the Zen till you're older. Try getting there a bit quicker. You've got this sense of, meaning and purpose in life, and looking for that, and just, maybe point me in that direction a bit quicker." might have been helpful. It is interesting, isn't it, though? But because I also think, though, that I had to go through all those years of, all the mistakes you make, and all the joys and triumphs and sorrows, because that's what gets us to this point. So yeah, I met my younger self. My younger self might have just told me to bugger off. So
Yeah.
no, I did actually, though. A while ago now, I did go back, and I was at my parents'. So this must have actually been, I suppose, pre-COVID, maybe, because I haven't stayed over since there. And I was in the bedroom that I had slept in as a kid, and I'd been very, very unhappy. I was quite an unhappy teenager, full of angst, and I just kind of went in there and sat down, and I just actually had a conversation with myself, with my young self, and just said, it will be all right. There's somebody out there who's looking out for you. So this kind of, going back to sort of see your younger self. Yeah, and I actually sat down and did that.
So I wonder perhaps if there's any other particular examples, maybe or maybe not, that sort of when we're thinking about these troublesome Buddhas. I mean, even if it's just like someone cut you up on the road, or you saw them in the vet front waiting room or something, whatever it might be. And those kind of little mini learning experiences.
Yeah. Well, we get it a lot around here, actually, of visitors when they come up here and they drive drive so slowly, man, and they're like driving at like 20 miles an hour down the loch, with their phone out the window taking pictures. And you're trying to go to work, you're trying to do whatever. It's like, oh, I mean, and certainly up until even, just a few years ago, I would have been right up behind them, flashing my lights, pull it, mouthing at them,
Right.
Yeah. I used to drive very aggressively. I'd be right up there, trying to force them to pull over, and terrible, really. But and because it was like me, I need to get up the road. You need to get out of my way. You're the person causing the problem here. Choice words. Um, where, Whereas now, it's still exactly the same thing still happens. Trying to go to work, got a certain amount of time to get there, and then there'll be somebody, tootling along in a motorhome, so you haven't got a chance of overtaking them, and they're probably not even aware you're there. And nine. I can't claim to do this 10 times out of 10, but maybe 9 times out of 10, I'll just pull back. I'll just pull back, and I'll just think they might be worried about driving on the road. It's an unfamiliar road. Maybe they're looking at the beautiful view. I can look at the beautiful view. It's just like, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? In the scheme of things, this person is not ruining my day. They're just tootling along, and it's okay. I don't know. So yeah. So 9 times out of 10 now, I just think, wow, I've just become this really sort of like mellow driver who's just kind of tootling along, and yeah. But it's quite nice because actually, if you chill out a bit, quite often they will actually pull over for you anyway when they get to a lay-by or something. And then it's like, hey, thank you, that was really nice. And you've got a little bit of, tiny moment of interaction with them. And then maybe on the 10th out of the 10th time, I drive right up behind them and start gesticulating. Yeah, just, can't claim to be that. But yeah, it is very noticeable. My driving style, has changed quite a lot. Yeah, it just doesn't seem important. If I'm 5 minutes late, it's not important. I'm not driving an ambulance with a flashing light.
I mean, that's such a relatable example because no matter where you are, you're stuck behind some slow driver, and it can make a massive difference to your day. How you respond to that situation. You get like really aggressive and stressed, or whether you just sort of pass, as you say, pass them with a wave.
Totally. And it's that kind of, used to be very, 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 genuinely angry behind the wheel, genuinely angry. And that has really dissipated just, through practice and meditation and mindfulness. A lot of that anger now is really kind of just worked through and is no longer there. So I think even just, pootling along in the car, I can be like, well, this is the moment and this is it, and this is pretty good. I was listening to a podcast with a guy talking about the koan, "The World Is Our Medicine." For me, that koan had always meant the bits of the world I like. So nature, mountains, streams, woods, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and then they were saying that actually, no, the world is your medicine is everything that's here at this moment in time. This is your medicine. So even if it sucks, if it's absolutely awful, the world is your medicine. And I kind of think of that because driving to work is not necessarily something you would think in your life as, wow, this is the best moment in my life. I'm really making the most of driving to work, of this experience. But I quite often just think that now when I'm just driving along, that's all I'm doing. I'm just driving to work, and this is it. The world is my medicine as I'm driving along. And if the world's got a big motorhome in the way, driving at 25 miles an hour, then that's how it is. And I've got the choice to actually just really enjoy the moment, or I can I can just waste it by being steamingly angry about it, or stressed or anxious or what have you. So yeah, it's given me a much more kind of relaxed attitude, I suppose, to those bits of the day that are maybe not necessarily the things we're looking forward to, or not necessarily the most exciting parts of the day, but those kind of very mundane activities that can at times become really stressful or can be really irritating or annoying, trying to allow those to be enjoyable, to be the moment,
Mm.
driving the car, or loading up the dishwasher or something.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being willing to share some of these examples and some of the wisdom that you found. It's really enlightening to hear, from someone who's been practicing for some years and has really got a deep meditation practice, how you've been able to apply your practice to some of these tricky situations. I really hope that people who are listening will find that very inspirational. So thank you so much for being willing to share.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Mm.
It's been really nice talking.
I'd like to finish by briefly considering what is a Zen koan, since I think Penny mentioned koans a few times, and also I explore a number of koans in my book that relate directly to working with difficult people. So the word koan is a Japanese word that literally means case or precedent. Typically they're short vignettes or exchanges between a monk and a teacher from the past that have precipitated a shift in the monk's understanding. Often they seem a bit nonsensical, like riddles. But they're not riddles. Riddles are designed to be solved with the intellectual mind. With a koan, the intellect mostly just throws its hands up saying, "This doesn't make any sense." And that's kind of the point. They push us towards using a different kind of knowing. A more direct, embodied, intuitive kind of knowing. Now the classic koan is Joshu's Mu. And the story goes like this. A monk once asked Joshu, who was a famous Chinese Zen master from around the Tang dynasty, 700s or something in China. So the monk asked, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" And Joshu answered, "Mu." Now mu is a Japanese word, Chinese word wu would have pronounced it. The closest translation in English is the prefix un, a little bit like unnecessary. So it's a negative, but not an outright no. Now, almost certainly the monk would have known that the traditional Buddhist doctrine, all animals have Buddha nature. So he was expecting a yes. So maybe he was trying to test Joshu at some level. But Joshu's mu was sufficiently unexpected that in a sense it shocked the monk into seeing a new perspective, one that was more direct, and one that was not caught up in thinking or concepts about what should or shouldn't be or what he'd read. Far from being arcane riddles that mean something only if you're a Japanese Zen monk, these koans, these cases or examples from the past are actually full of wisdom, if we can learn to look at them and work with them in the right way. And that's what I hope will come across in the book when we look at these different koans in relation to difficult people. Now Penny refers to the koan about all the world being our medicine. And the story relates to a time when the teacher Umon said to his students, "Medicine and sickness cure each other. All earth is medicine. Where do you find yourself?" Now, in this, Umon was actually himself referencing an older story in which the Bodhisattva Manjusri, the embodiment of wisdom, once asked Zenzai, an earnest Zen student, to bring him something that was not a medicine. Zenzai couldn't find anything in his environment that couldn't work as a medicine. And as Penny says, we might start off recognizing only certain things in our world as medicine. As she says, like mountains, nature, relaxing on a warm beach, good food. But Umon is saying all the earth is our medicine. One of the core teachings of the Buddha is that suffering is nirvana, as in enlightenment is to be found right here, in the midst of all our suffering and all our joys. In Zen they say the lotus blooms in the fire being our world of suffering and struggles and everyday comings and goings. This is a very beautiful koan of Master Umon. It really invites us to look at how we can cure ourselves of our suffering with what we have in the world right here at our fingertips. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and a star rating on whatever platform you use. And do recommend it to others, because we all have difficult people in our lives, and each of them offers us a real opportunity for learning and growth. For more information about my book and what else I offer, head over to my website, markwestmackett.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.